No, there was a few things that went wrong. The first one was there was no buy time, so the round would just start. And then
So you played the default pistols and her
no,
No,
you don't. No, you don't. Because you can buy anywhere. You can buy anywhere at any point.
That's amazing.
Let's get this episode started. It's episode 29 of Geographically Challenged, and yeah, a few things to sort of talk about this week. A few things that have been interesting, some bad, some good. I think there's a few that Pilski said he wanted to rant about, so I'm looking forward to getting to that point of the episode. One other thing to touch on is that I'm now a Skybox partner, which I suppose kind of makes us Skybox partnered in a way, because the whole point of it was to get it on Geographically Challenged. So that'll be something that we'll hopefully be able to use a little bit in the future. We'll use some of it today and see how we go, and whether or not people like it and whether or not people find it funny, I guess we'll have to see. But judging by how Pilski normally uses Skybox on broadcasts, I think we should find some pretty good nuggets of hilarity in the Asian CS scene, as we all know and love, generally speaking. But anyway, let's jump into the topics for today. And the first one that I want to sort of bring up is the Oceania RMR, right? So this was hosted by Epic. Epic Esports Events, I think, is actually the title of the company. And there was a few things that were a head scratcher. I think before we dive into some of the specific details or whatever points of discussion, what was just your general thoughts on the RMR? Like, I didn't really watch a whole lot of it, to be honest. I mean, the results aside, we can talk about that a bit more in depth later on. I think, like, I just didn't even really think about it. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't seem to sort of pop up all that much. I did watch a little bit here and there, but it didn't really feel like a big deal to me for some reason. I don't know if it was the same for you guys.
Yeah. I guess it's too many events happening at the same time, right? Like there was the other RMRs happening, the EU ones, if I'm not mistaken, almost at the same time. Plus CIS, obviously you have some of the best teams right now in the world playing in that RMR. So while, yeah, it was happening, I did take a look at it. And I guess the reason for me personally why nothing really jumped out was because the games kind of played out the way we expected it to. Was Renegades in order, looking pretty much indomitable. Rooster, of course, having a pretty solid run, all things considered, coming in third over there. But I guess it just felt like a run-of-the-mill event, like where the usual suspects just performed well. And at the same time, it was also happening at the same time as a multitude of other, tier 1 events, so to speak. Not just one, but a couple of them at the same time. So for me, I felt like that was one of the main reasons why I just kind of... It was on my radar. I just didn't watch too many games, except maybe the finals.
I think for me, like, part of it is, normally when you're going to watch a tournament or there's a tournament coming up, there's going to be like this lead up, this build up. Everyone's going to be tweeting about it. The TO's going to be tweeting about it. You'll see like a talent announcement. You'll see a team's graphic, all this sort of shit. Like, when do you watch it? Where do you watch it? I don't think we really saw a whole lot of that, to be honest. I recall on Twitter, even the day of, there was situations where people were wondering still who was going to cast it. We didn't really find out until it actually started, because, again, it was no Australian talent outside of, I think, Matzi and Two Tap Tony ended up casting a little bit at some point later on in the piece. But, for me, like, I get a lot of my information from the people that I follow. And obviously a lot of those happen to be Australian commentators. And if there's something happening, they're tweeting about it. I'm seeing, ESCA is happening tonight. Such and such won, such and such lost. This happened, that happened. But I didn't really feel like I got much of that at all from the RMR. So I don't know. It just felt like a bit meh to me. Pilski, what were your thoughts?
About the results, or there's a lot. I guess
I'm sure you can go
into
to anything. Do you want me to lead you through some of these topics, or would you like to just have your free for all to begin with, and then we'll dive deeper into specifics that I've sort of thought might be interesting to talk about?
Look, I think it's worth going over the results first, because I think actually maybe the results, there's some interesting ones, but there might be like the less interesting part and the less relevant for me, at least. I don't know if you guys would agree. Part of this whole discussion about RMR tournaments and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, sure. So I think there were some interesting ones, to be honest. Like, obviously, Order has shown that they are good enough to beat Renegades. but and they've already done that in the past a number of times, despite the fact that Renegades have got like that sort of like buff from going overseas, I guess you could call it, a little bit, and then coming back, having better quality practice and whatnot, and having some time sort of participating in Europe and whatnot, which is a pretty big deal and has kind of been a defining factor a lot of the time in minor regions. When you go overseas, you play against the best in the world, you come back after a big boot camp and a big opportunity to really improve and iron out a lot of issues and learn a lot of lessons. Maybe wasn't as much of a factor, I guess. I think the upper echelon of the region is in a weird state right now, because you've got Renegades who I think are still figuring out how to 100% their team. They've like we said when the initial changes were made, no Dexter, and you replace with Alistair. It's hard to like conceptualize a way to make that team work without like either people drastically shifting the way a couple of people like shifting around the way they play in the team and then just trying to make it work better. And I still don't think they've got that formula down. And I'm not really sure what the solution is. I think Order is a very, very strong team at the moment. Obviously, they won AZ champs and they took the upper final off of Renegades, but did the classic of like playing Renegades extremely close in the grand final and just choking it or not closing it out, even though they're very capable of winning. It reminded me, funnily enough, of was Road to Rio the first RMR last year?
That was the first RMR like ever.
Literally, a very similar thing happened in Road to Rio last year, where Order in the first RMR of the year should have beaten Renegades, but choked and didn't do it. And the same things happened in the first RMR of this year, which is crazy, even though it's not the same.
Yeah.
The fact that Rooster's even playing is like a bit of a weird one, right, Jordan? Because like they haven't been active due to a number of reasons. People getting banned and doing stupid shit. And this doesn't just apply to like Counter-Strike. This is also something I've recently seen in Valorant for Oceania as well. People who are young and don't understand the consequences of their actions, doing stupid shit like breaking tournament rules or just thinking, I could do this, I can get away with X or Y or whatever, and then just getting banned for like 6 months, getting banned for a year, and not realizing like you've actually fucked your career like at this point a little bit, even though they're very, very good players. And then Direwolves, like underwhelming, I guess is the way I would put it. But again, they still haven't 100%ed their team either. So they're a team with a lot of potential. So the way I look at like the Oceanic region, and the thing that a lot of these results tell me after like summing everything up, is that we've got a lot of good teams that are not playing at their level, at the 100% of their level yet, haven't hit their ceiling yet, which is kind of exciting, because I think there's a couple of teams that could potentially step up to like a very, very high level of play.
Yeah, things have been a little bit weird after all of the roster changes that have come through, particularly for Direwolves. I'm still not really sure where they should sit. They looked really good in ANZ champs, but then you could make the argument that they were kind of noob bashing a little bit, where like they were just clearly a better team and they ran away with things because of that. But if they're up against really good competition, actually, how good are they? If that makes sense. On the topic of the Renegades result against Order in the upper bracket match, I don't know if you watched all of that or much of that. I didn't watch all of it. I watched a little bit. And from what I saw, Renegades looked horrible in that game. Like, they just looked like they weren't even playing the game. I was thinking, like, I've literally never seen Renegades playing CS, like, this poorly in the last 6-12 months. So I don't know what was going on for them there. They even lost, like, a 2v5 anti-eco, right? They had the advantage. They were up 5 versus 2s, like, you're about to get the bomb down. Then I just see a guy run across long, like, carrying the bomb. This is on Dust 2. Run across the CT. Fucking no smokes, like no cover, no one peeking. He just runs across and dies. And then the bomb's dropped and then someone peeks, someone dies, blah, blah, blah. Fucking the round just like disappears. I'm like, what is going on? Like, this is not normal for Renegades. And I was talking to one of the guys from Order, not one of the players or anyone related to the CS team, just someone from, the staff. And he was saying to me, like, oh, we're pretty happy with that result, but do you reckon they can do it on the grand final? I said, no fucking way they can't do that, because Renegades looked like shit today and they're not going to come into the grand final and play like that. So
yeah, it's something I even have to explain to like teams that I like coach a little bit, that like might get an upset result or something like that. And it's hard to like straddle that like line of like, you guys got the upset, But it's
Congratulations,
very
yeah.
hard to tell people that the other team played like shit and you wouldn't win next time if they played really well, you know. And I feel like, you know, it's very easy when you're like a caster or an analyst or whatever to say that. But like even just thinking back to my days of being a shit tier player and then maybe like getting like a best of one map upset in like ESEA Premier or something over a really good team. And then you generally like are pretty delusional when you're a player sometimes. Like you actually go like, holy shit, that was awesome. Like you don't realize the other team's playing bad. You don't realize all the like mistakes they're making sometimes. And you're just like, you know, you're just the bloke who's like, oh fuck, I clutched that 1v3, but you don't realize like they fucking like one of them flashed each other or something, or like they're playing badly, you know. You don't realize a lot of that stuff.
What about you, Blair? Have you ever had a situation where you've been casting and there's been an upset and someone you've kind of played down, like downplayed the upset, been like, oh, you know, it wasn't that good because the better team was like not playing that well today. And then have you got in shit for that? Because that has happened to me all the time. Like there's always two arguments. Like the team that wins will be like, we fucking upset the, you know, blah, blah, blah. We're the best, whatever. And then the team that lost was like, we didn't care about that game at all. Like that was just a round robin match. That game didn't matter at all, blah, blah, blah. So you're like kind of like having to play this balancing act as a caster between those two results. So like
I actually got
all the
that
time to me.
No, that happens to me. It happened to me. No, it's happened to me quite a few times, especially because I work a desk and I try to be as objective as possible. So that's even more, you know, I can't be like a caster. When I'm casting, I'll usually be like, you know what? Nice attempt, blah, blah, blah. On the desk, I'm just going to be no bullshit, right? Like they sucked. They were the better team. I remember this one time, I think it was the Extra Salt boys. I remember this is like before the Extra Salt, when they were still like a South American team. I think it was Bravado? I think it was Bravado.
Or was it Bravado?
I think it was Bravado.
So it was still like majority South African players? Or
Majority South African playing a DreamHack Open once. This is like a couple of years back, I remember. And they had a pretty good fucking run. I won't lie, they had a pretty decent run. And the first game was against pretty much, you know how in opens you have like a couple of teams who are from the local region, right? And they just made through the local qualifier. So they beat them. I'm like, okay, you know, it's kind of expected result. And they had a pretty decent showing against another team. And I'm like, they're not going to go any further. Like, you know, they played well, taking nothing away from them. But, you know, this team had a bad day. They had an off day, and they're not gonna make it through. And I just started getting bombarded by like South African, not just the players, mind you, but South African Overwatch personalities, South Africa. I'm like, I don't even fucking know who you are, right? And it's just like, you know, fuck you don't know about anything about South Africa, and you know, blah blah blah. You don't know how it's like from a different, you know, from a struggling region to rise up in esports. I'm like, you're telling me now. Yeah. You're telling me about that motherfucker.
Yeah, but India hasn't risen up yet. That's the difference. You know,
we're never gonna. Not in Counter-Strike at least.
Hopefully. Probably not.
But hopefully in Valorant. I do have my fingers crossed. I won't lie. Of course, the funniest thing is I get the last laugh because they didn't make it through off that level. They
so you were right in the end. Yeah.
Suck it. Yeah, fuck yeah, suck it, bitches.
Suck it, bitches. Yeah. Anyway, bit of a tangent, but look, it's all fun. To bring it back to some of the RMR topics. Now, the first one that I sort of wanted to touch on here was the seeding. Was a little bit weird, and I think this was something that was brought up quite a bit on Twitter.
Yeah.
Again, just on like that first day. For me, like that first day was when I was like, oh shit, the RMR's happening. Ever since then, it was like no one gave a shit. It seemed like to me. But there was a lot of shit going down on that first day. First thing was the seeding. It seemed like the first rumor that I saw was that they had seeded based on Faceit ranking. Because I think they were using the Faceit servers or whatever, the Faceit client to sort of do the whole tournament. Now,
wait, didn't they not have access to Faceit servers? Because that's what they mentioned for the CIS RMR. That's why they said they didn't have any anti-cheat, because you know, Faceit being one of the biggest third-party companies, did not want to do it with them because obviously, you know, it's a different tournament, it's a different IP and all that stuff. That's why they didn't use Faceit servers for the CIS RMR, which is also done by Epic. So yeah, something's not quite adding up here. Something's not adding up here. They literally said that yesterday on an HLTV interview. I think one of the CEOs or whatever, you know.
Well, I did a little bit more digging anyway, and I think what ended up happening was that they had done the seeding based on the HLTV ratings, or HLTV ranking, I should say. Which, you know, we've already had a big QQ about this last year. I went back and looked. I think it might have been episode 14. And it's just like, okay, whatever, fine. I guess that is what it is. I looked at the HLTV rankings today and I was like, oh, you know, they're not actually that bad like now, but that was before the RMR tournament, obviously, was when the seeding would have had to have happened and things were weird. And Vertex was like 8th seed, which, like, I guess is fair enough because they're a new team and they don't really have that many results. But all you have to do is ask someone, and
Exactly.
you know, anyone's going to say they're a higher seeding than Skyfire or Bazaar or whoever the fuck else was in this tournament. Let me have a look. Skyfire, Bazaar. I mean, they arguably are a higher seed than Paradox as well, depending on who you would ask. Rooster's another hard one because they just don't play in anything. And when they do, it's like a different roster. And, you know, that's a whole different kettle of fish. But anyway, what did you want to say, Bleh?
No, I just wanted to touch upon that thing. Like, we've spoken about this multiple times as well when it comes to different TOs and trying to do events in, let's say, regions like Asia or maybe sometimes even South America and obviously in Australia as well. Look, I remember when I used to work for So Strong, like I was also part of like running the tournament, so to speak, right? Because of like helping out Nems, who was like the admin and everything, the head admin for So Strong. And we've done it for Valorant Masters, we've done it for PGL as well. And whenever we had an Oceanic thing, like even though I did know the Oceanic scene decently, I would still try to reach out to you guys, or maybe, and before I knew you guys that well, I used to talk to like, who was it? Deep Impact, good old Deep Impact. I'd speak to him, and I'd speak to like a couple of people. I'd look at their rankings, I'll look at the reasonings, I'll try to throw in my thoughts as well. And it wouldn't take too much time. They'd be more than happy to help, you know, because it's for their own region, right? And I'd just take a look at it, and Jim would be like, you know, hey, I think this team might be better. I'm not sure about it. I'll leave it up to you. And just like that, you have a pretty decent seeding ranking right there ready to go, right? Because anyone who knows Counter-Strike knows that any of these more obscure regions like our regions, or like, let's say, once upon a time South America for that matter, or even South Africa, the rankings really don't make sense in HLTV. They just don't have enough sample data to work with, right? I don't know why. And you're doing a fucking RMR, right? Why don't you take the tiny little extra step? It's not that big a fucking step, you know, just to make it even more better, and instead of just take this cheap way out where they just like look at HLTV rankings, or like some people pointed out, the face it ranks, which was the case in one event a while ago. I'm just not able to place which one it was. It was in Australia as well. Which one was it?
I can't remember. I don't know what it was.
It's a couple of years back, man. Fuck. Anyway,
there was any number of fucked up qualifiers.
Are you talking about one that was seeded by face it?
Yeah.
Elo. Yeah, I think I played in that. I remember that.
Jesus,
I played
dude,
in like
I
an
remember
open
that.
qualifier for that or something like that. And I remember that seeding. I remember playing in something that was seeded like that. And I think we were like a premier team or something. And 3 of our guys didn't even play Face It. And they were like level 4 on Face It or some shit. And we got seeded against like some other guys, like a whole bunch of teams that were just like literally could not aim in a straight line. Like, it was so ridiculous, you know, just because you don't like use the platform at all, like you play. There was like for reference, there was times in Australia where there was better rewards for playing ESEA, like they offered like prizes and whatnot. It's the same thing for Asia, even to this day. Like some people would play like a ESEA tournaments or something, or use ESEA client instead of Face It. And that was the case at the time. I think they used like Face It, and there was like prizes for ECA. So people were just grinding ECA and trying to get like, highest RWS and all that kind of stuff.
Imagine having a tournament in Asia, like $100,000 tournament in Asia, and you're like, which teams do we invite and seed? Let's take a look at ESEA Open. All right. No Tyloo, none of the Chinese
it's gonna
teams.
Be like Tiger or Renewal, I guess, whatever.
So there'll be like Renewal, there'll be like D13, and there'll be like maybe a couple of the Singaporean teams.
Or something.
That's it.
Like Huatsai,
and then apart from that, and the rest of them are literally gonna be actual like LEM team, you know, players just looking to make a name of themselves, looking to practice. So yeah, I mean, do your motherfucking due diligence, right? Stop fucking shit up, and that pisses me off, and I'm sure it pisses you guys off as well.
Yeah, I mean, I get the reason why these RMRs are going to like companies that aren't ESL or DreamHack or,
and that's good. I'm okay with that.
That's fine. Again, I agree as well. It's just that it needs to kind of be done properly. And like, I don't know that there has been any TO that has really run a good Asia tournament outside of ESL, DreamHack, or maybe PGL as well. Like some of those PGL miners have been pretty good.
The big three.
There's obviously a bit of a tangent about the format in terms of round robins and whatever that may be, but I don't know if that's on PGL or if that's on Perfect World or
that's on Perfect World.
Whatever.
That's on Perfect World.
But yeah, like someone just fucking do it right. That's all I want to know. All I want to see, really. Look,
all right, we're going to be starting off our own event. You know,
the Geographically challenged RMR. It would probably be the best fucking tournament in Asia.
It would be the best fucking online Asian event ever made. 100%. There we go.
You'd have the best casters. You'd have the best format. You'd have the best teams. It would be sick. Anyways, look, Valve or whoever does the hiring for that, slide into my DMs. We'll make it happen. We're going on a massive tangent again about stuff that wasn't really part of the run of the show, but that's fine. We want to talk about the Rooster players as well here, Pilski. Now, it is a bit weird, I agree, or in particular, like, Netic is the one that's actually banned by ESIC, right? So there was a tweet that you linked to me, and this was some random guy, I don't even remember who it was, but he was basically kind of pointing out the fact that Rooster has had these players that were banned playing in the RMR tournament, and he was sort of saying, why are they allowed to play in the RMR tournament if they're banned by ESIC? And I sort of looked into it. I think, like, end of the day, they're not actually banned by Valve. Do you know what I mean? So,
they're not.
Like, it's not really that bad of a thing. ASAP was banned by ESL. So that's only an ESL ban. That's not even an ESIC ban. And I think that is now has been overturned since the last maybe month or couple of weeks. And Netic was ESIC banned, but Epic is not an ESIC partner as far as I can see. So, I mean, it was weird. What was more weird to me was the fact that they had like this rotating core of players, and like Netic wasn't playing in half the games. I think he only ended up playing in one game. So I'm just not sure what's going on there. I feel like for me, Rooster's one of those teams where, like, I don't even fucking know what's going on with Rooster sometimes. It's like, who's on that roster? I don't know. It's different every fucking week. They seem to get results regardless of who's playing. Like, they had better results with Dekni, I think, who was standing in for Netic, even though he played more games than Netic, than what they did when they had Netic. So I don't know what's going on. Anything to say there, Pilski, or...
It has to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis at the end of the day as to who you've got playing in your tournament and the reasons for their ban and all that kind of stuff, and it has to be investigated. And I think, like, I'm of the opinion that I don't think Epicenter did a great job with the Oceanic RMR, and a lot of that was they couldn't get a lot of basic things right in my mind, like seeding and casts and stuff like that. I don't see them putting like a ton of extra effort into like investigating this like stuff on a case by case basis, but I might be wrong. And I think that's the only way you can really do it at the end of the day. And they have to make their own decisions. And if they, did all of the due diligence and they decided it's totally okay for them to play, then great. Hats off to them. But I find I would be surprised if they did, to be honest, because I just don't have a whole lot of faith in them just based on how the whole event went, and there was no like social media promotion. There was they couldn't do a lot of the basic stuff right. So I would kind of wonder to myself whether that the due diligence was done properly in that regard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess Pilski just said what I wanted to say as well. You got to take it case by case basis. Like the ban thing, I have to say that, look, it's already a really murky thing right now. It's like, where E6's authority ends, so to speak, and all of that, right? And like you said, it's not a Valve thing. So even if he was banned by ESIC, and even if Epic was an ESIC partner, I would not ban him from playing in this tournament.
Look, and the reason why, like, I said that as well is because, like, okay, let's say like it's an ESL ban or something that one of them was banned for, and say he was still banned. Do people think in general that other TOs should follow that same ruling? That's a massive question, and that's just one case. And then you talk about the ESIC thing of people being ESIC banned. Well, I'm sure people who follow this podcast will already know about all of that ESIC stuff with the Oceanic players and whatnot, and how they had to basically sit on hold their careers for months and months and months. A whole bunch of them who could have been playing actively might have missed a whole season of play, kind of thing. You know, it's just
imagine a world. Imagine a world where, like, I know ESIG that finally came out like after like God knows how long, saying absolving a lot of the players of whatever happened, right? A lot of them. Imagine this RMR event took place before that happened.
Yeah,
Just think about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like it would have been such a clusterfuck.
In a sense, we had an ANZ champ season, which like literally got obliterated by, not obliterated, right? But like we were a few weeks out from starting ANZ champs. Like everyone had sorted their teams, bunch of teams had qualified, whatever. And then the ESIG ban comes through, and like half the teams, I can't even remember what the statistic was, but there was like, whether it was in the qualifier or the actual tournament, the teams that had qualified for, it was like, 50 or 60% of the teams had players that were affected. And as a result, we just had this shit fight of like outside of the top 4 or 5, it was just a shit fight. And even in the top 4 or 5, like Vertex got fucking railed. And then going down the list further on, it just everyone was like cooked.
We forget it, but let me just remind anybody, and I'm sure a lot of people didn't watch ANZ champs, but me and Jordan were literally there in this RMR tournament, and in a lot of big tournaments last year. Rooster is a top 3 team in Oz. In ESL ANZ champs, they got disqualified without even playing a single round. They were ready to play their game, and they got fucking disqualified like on the first fucking day of the tournament. Like, that just goes to show you what kind of like guys are playing on Rooster. It's just so fucking stupid, dude. It's just so stupid.
I genuinely
They're so
feel
good
like
at the game, but they just can't fucking keep their mouth shut. And they just can't stop doing stupid.
I feel that's. I really feel like Rooster epitomizes a very, pretty famous. I wouldn't say saying, but like a thing we kind of talk about behind the scenes, where like, just because a player is really, really good at the game doesn't mean he cannot be an absolute dumb fuck. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the Rooster players epitomize that so well. I mean, like you said, they have so much potential, but they genuinely don't seem to give a fuck. And that's the problem. I'm okay with it. Listen, man, I like rock and roll as well. I want to be a rebel too, all right? It's all cool. I've been there. I was young once upon a time. But if you want to be, but if you want to be a part of something which is already well established, already has everything going, and everyone's taking seriously, and in which a lot of people's livelihoods actually depends on it, you just can't come rolling in, with your cut off sleeves and your spikes and the tattoos on your faces, like smoking a big fat doobie. Yeah, fuck yeah, bro. I'm good at what I do. I'm just gonna fucking just roll on in. No, fuck off. You're just gonna get the fuck out of the building. So it's like, just grow the fuck up. I did. It's not that hard. Just grow the fuck up. You're just fucking yourselves over at this point.
I just imagine like ASAP rolling into a LAN at ESL like with a fucking massive like, I don't even know. Whatever. That didn't go very well. Whatever.
I think I remember the LAN where Chelios finally came to the LAN. I remember seeing like
everyone thought he was gonna be like some 50-year-old fucking baseball.
I really thought he was like a 30-year-old guy.
But like he had like a Rage Against the Machine t-shirt on. I think I remember seeing that in like some of the B-roll of the event. So yeah, that pretty much says it.
All right. Anyway, we are fucking going on a mad tangents today, which is actually providing some good quality content, I think. But there's one more thing we have to talk about with this RMR before we really move on to some other topics, and that was something that you alluded to, Pilski, with the commentators that were selected. Now, again, like, I didn't actually really have a problem with any of the casters. Like, I noticed a few things that were like objectively just not correct, in terms of like their knowledge about Oceanic Counter-Strike, but like, whether they knew the teams or the players or whatever that may be. But like, end of the day, like, I've commentated games from other regions that I don't follow that often, and it's pretty fucking hard. Even if you do put your research in and do your due diligence, you still are going to get stuff wrong, and you're probably still going to go against the grain in some of your opinions. And that seems to continue to happen to us, even when when like, we're quite experienced commentators now. I'm 5, fucking 6, 7 years deep. I don't even know how old I am now. And we're still doing these international tournaments, and people are saying, oh, this is probably not, maybe this or that wasn't right. And you're like, okay, fair enough. So I can get it from that perspective. So I just want to have that initial caveat that, like, I have no issue with the commentators themselves, or, the fact that they didn't necessarily know the region as well as the local commentators would. But the issue that I have is more so with the tournament operator not selecting local talent. So it's not so much that I didn't like the guys that were chosen or would want to take work away from them, But it's more so that I want to see casters in our region commentating games from our region, getting the opportunities from our region, because there are so few that are there to begin with, that if you don't get those opportunities, there is no local commentators, there is no, local knowledge, whatever that may be. And I will go out and say, I didn't even try to get this gig. So this is not something personal vendetta or anything. I didn't even approach Epic at all. I know commentators who did, and I know there was a lot from the Oceanic region that reached out that didn't even receive a reply. Some received replies, and we're still not able to manage to get that work. Now, inevitably, there was a couple that managed to sort of sneak their way in there, but I think that was actually because the guys that were working the show ended up having to cast like 4 BO3s a day, and were just like, no, we can't really do this. So they ended up getting Matsy and Tony on it.
I don't know if I should tell this full story on the podcast. What do you think?
Oh,
Jordan?
yeah, you should. Oh, yeah, you should. Fuck it. Just put it out loud, dude.
Why not?
All right. So, like, literally, as soon as they announced that Epic League was, I think it was like an HLTV article that announced like Epic League was doing CIS and Oceania, and I literally like applied straight away. Tried to get in contact with them, and I got in contact with them. I sent them like the events that I've done. I said, hey, look, I did like most of the RMRs last year. I've covered 9 seasons of national championships for this region. And I've done a whole bunch of other events as well. That
also,
aren't
I've
RMRs.
casted an IEM Sydney. That might have been,
that helps.
I did. I mean, I think I basically just sent them like all the events I've done. You know what you do when you're a caster, you make up your portfolio and like include all your events. Blah 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 blah. So I did all that, and I got a response, and they said they were interested, and we even started to negotiate a little bit. And he started to give me some details of what was happening. And then essentially what happened was I sent them an email, and then it was like radio silence for like 2 weeks. And it was getting very close to the event. And then I was like, hey guys, do you guys still need me to cast this event? You haven't answered like a whole bunch of questions that I had, which are going to be pretty important for me to know if I'm like doing this event. Like, is there assisted production, or is this like an individual stream of this event? Is there space for like another caster to come on, or all this kind of stuff, that I wanted to know. And they said, oh, we don't need you anymore. Like, we found other casters. And I've heard that this TO has like scrambled to find casters at the last minute in other cases. And I think essentially that might have been what happened here again. So that's just like the initial selection of the casters. They've gone with like European talent at the last minute, I guess, which is their prerogative. They're the TO. They get to choose what talent they want to put on the broadcast. But as you already said, Jordan, like this is an RMR, and we really love this region. We want to cast this region. We want to cover this region. But when we don't get the opportunity to do it, then, it's pretty demotivating. And that's even after I'm going to completely leave out like how much people were paid and all that kind of stuff, but I think you can, from the decision making process, you can already infer what might have happened there. But as for the selection of further casters, I believe that, like you said, Jordan, the cast, at least from what I've heard, the casters reached out and looked for some Aussie guys to do it. Number one, because
they did. I don't know about you, Pilski, but I actually got a DM from one of them saying,
I got a DM as well.
I'm not available today.
Yeah. I got a DM and I said, I'm not available. And also, this is what happened before. I'd really not like to receive. I already undercut myself initially. I'd really not like to receive like much, much less than I worked for an RMR literally last year to do this broadcast at the last minute. So I said no. And then I gave them the names of some people who may do it on short notice. And that's how the casters were selected. Because at the time that this person was looking for casters to do the broadcast I think was starting in like 5 hours.
Yeah, I got a message at 2 a.m. the morning of, and then the thing was starting, I don't know, like maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon that day.
Yes.
Obviously, I didn't see that message until I woke up at like 10.
Yes.
So yeah, anyway, that's how it sort of all panned out. So
yeah,
look. Okay, you go.
Yeah, I think it's just really annoying because you look at the main thing that I want to stress is you look at all of the fucking problems with this competition that was there, and a lot of them are on the TO. And I can tell you firsthand that they were directly in contact with someone that could have helped them to solve all of these problems if they had just literally reached out. And I would have done it for free. I even, I would have been happy to help them with seeding. I would have been happy to help them get in contact with players. I think initially they were going to use a time zone that like nobody would have used for scheduling purposes.
Oh,
and I was like,
time.
don't use. They were using like Adelaide daylight savings time when daylight savings was going to start for like 6 months. And I was like, what? Why are you using that time zone? Anyway, doesn't matter. Like, there's just all this stuff that it's like, if you would just do the due diligence and like reach out, and you could easily solve like a whole bunch of these problems. So, budgets and selecting talent is one thing. Fair enough. I think every caster has already been through that. I'm sure you've been through that, Blair. I know you've been through that, Jordan. It happens. This kind of stuff happens, and it's sometimes that's just how it be. The TO can't always afford to pay the talent or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, before we close that topic again, I just want to say, because I'm sure at some point one of those guys might watch this, one of those guys that casted this, because I've been in this situation similar. I want to say, like, I think they did a pretty decent job for fucking getting up at like 6 a.m. in the morning in wherever the fuck it is, England, wherever they were from. So it's nothing really against them. That's the main takeaway for me. But look, we've kind of talked for 35 minutes about this RMR, which we didn't even cover. So we need to start rolling through some of these other topics.
I just noticed you said, I'm going to shave my head if more Asian teams move to Valorant. I did not agree to this. It's a fucking blatant lie.
It's on the graphic,
Fuck you,
man.
Jordan.
I don't know.
It's a lie.
How that got there. I don't make the graphics.
I'm just putting it out there. It's a lie.
All right.
Fucking lie.
Okay, well, speaking of fun times in Asian Counter-Strike, actually, something that was positive in my mind was the Hyperion X OEL Guam server launch. Now, I feel like I might have a different sentiment of this than what you guys might. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on this tournament before I actually go into my perspective. So, Pilski, that was an interesting laugh. Maybe... I feel like I want to hear from Bleh first, because Bleh hasn't said
definitely
much.
Give Bleh. I've been bracing for way too long.
Give Bleh some space here.
I really don't have much to add to this. I don't really have time to watch the tournament, but I did take a look at the results. And one thing I do remember, I'm just taking a look at the HLTV thing, and the results are all limited. But yeah, I do remember a lot of issues on day one. Ping-wise, I remember like a couple of teams that couldn't play at all. But it looked like they were able to fix the majority of the issues, at least by the second and third day, if I'm not mistaken. Although I did see some pretty memey clips coming out where players were playing with like some massive loss, more than what NIP had in their game. So yeah, I mean, it was expected though, right? I gotta say. Even though I'll give them credit where it's due, they were able to fix things up and able to complete a tournament, something which I thought wouldn't even happen. Like, if you go back quite a few months, I was one of the guys who was like, this isn't going to happen. Doesn't really make sense, but it looks like it can happen. What I don't agree with is the fact that you have a tournament where internet issues is going to be a big thing. Like, that is the entire focus of your tournament, of trying to make sure that these teams from China to Australia to wherever can play in a common location. You should be doing even more work than all the TOs do when it comes to prep work, when it comes to testing with the teams, when it comes to testing the routing, testing the packet losses, the pings, all of that stuff, well in advance of tournament even going live. And the fact that, from what I read online on Twitter at the very least, a few of the players were saying that they didn't have that opportunity, that they just came on in and then they weren't really asked to test or whatever, and they just jump into the server and then boom, 50% chokes and losses, pings were all over the place for a couple of teams and all of that. So yeah, I feel they really dropped the ball when it came to the lead up, the immediate lead up to the tournament, but they seem to, at least at the very end, manage to kind of redeem themselves, so to speak. Looking at the results, though, I guess it doesn't really surprise me, honestly. These are the usual suspects. We expected them to perform pretty decently. D13 coming in second, yeah, kind of expected. Linvision coming in first, I think that makes a lot of sense. They've been kind of dominating teams like Tyloo. They're having I feel like a top 3, top 4 team in China, always never qualifying for these Pan-Asian events and RMR events, because again, as we keep talking, they have to keep trying to get over the hump that is Tyloo and VG when it comes to the playoffs, which is never easy at all. But they showed that when it comes to the rest of Asia, some of the SCA teams, the Mongolian teams, it's pretty much a walk in the park for them. So the results weren't too surprising, and those are basically my 2 cents.
Okay, Pilski, what have you got for me here?
Every time
Every
time I think about this tournament, I just remember tuning into like reality from Sigma's stream, and it was just so fucking funny, man. Like it was literally unplayable. Like all of the guys in Thai were just like giggling to themselves. They're like trying to throw grenades, and the grenade just won't leave reality's head. He's like trying to flash his teammate in, and he's like, okay, flashing, and then like it lags, and then 3 seconds later he's like, all right, flashing, and then it just lags again. He's like spending 15 seconds just holding a fucking flash in his hand, or like he'll hold an angle and he'll just be like holding, like he was playing overpass, he's like AWPing, and he's like holding the monster, like long monster line on the T side, and he thinks he's like holding it, and then like someone just warps and he's dead, or like some shit like that. Like it was just so funny, like people running into walls and all this kind of shit. It just looked completely unplayable. It looked like a clown fiesta. But
was this day one, or was it?
I think it was day one. It was day one.
Okay.
Yeah. So day one got cancelled, by the way. They tried to play. Like, there was that match, Pilsy, that was the B stream game, and then the A stream game, which was the one that I was doing, was NKT. No, I was doing that one. That was NKT versus Sigma. And then there was another one on the B stream, which I think was a Mongolian team. And like the Mongolian teams were fucked. Like, you thought the Thai teams were having it rough. The Mongolian teams were in a way worse place than the Thai teams were. And so that game got cancelled, I think, before it even really started. We got about halfway into our match. I think it got into halftime, and like it was a fucking shit show, to be honest. Like, there was the guys that were adminning it obviously didn't have a lot of experience with Counter-Strike, so there was instances where some of the players were saying like what commands to put into the server to like restart a round or to do the match medical. Like, I don't know. I don't fucking admin servers, right? But
wasn't there one where there were no OT rules or something? Like something wild, I remember.
No, there was a few things that went wrong. The first one was there was no buy time. So the round would just start. And then
so you played the default pistols into her fucking game.
No, you don't. Because you can buy anywhere. You can buy anywhere at any point.
That's amazing.
So they improvise, adapt, overcome. Don't need a buy zone or buy time if you can just buy.
Why can't we have, apart from, ESL, they do a fantastic job, right? DreamHack, ESL, same guys. PGL always did try and do a fantastic job. And Extremestand as well. I'll give them credit, right? Like, homegrown, these guys. Apart from that, why is it every other fucking TO that tries to do an event in Asia, Australia, they just don't know the fucking basics of a 20-year-old game. A 20-year-old game, Elfish. A 20-motherfucking-year-old game.
I feel really bad because these guys were so clearly out of their depth. And, like, I have no idea.
Someone.
Well, yes, I have no idea what I'm doing with the server. And I can only imagine what it's like for someone that has no idea, walking into a Counter-Strike tournament, expecting things to work, and then you go in, you got to fucking put all these commands in the game. You're just like, holy shit, I'm so fucked. And they were so fucked. Like, there was that, there was the buy round, the buy time thing, you could buy anywhere. And then, so we finish the pistol goes well. Then it's like, the teams are like, oh, we can buy anywhere. So that fucking pause happens. And then we go through the second round, and then someone tries to drop their gun. And what happens when they drop their gun is it just disappears. Instead of falling on the floor, they try to throw their gun to someone, and it just disappears. So then there's another pause to fix that. Anyway, okay, fine. We got through the first half, and the server's just shitting itself. The teams are fucking complaining, whatever. And they decide to cancel. They decide to cancel the first day. Now, there are a few things I will say. I don't want to be too negative because I still think that there's a lot of potential with a tournament like this if things go well. So I don't want to fucking just shit on it and basically
one good admin, Elfish. There are quite a few
Correct.
of them freelancing around.
Yeah,
they
did need an admin. They needed someone that knew CS:GO. The servers themselves obviously needed to have something done to them. Like you said, they were actually sort of fixed by the end. The Mongolian teams were mega fucked. The Thai teams were struggling as well, but like it seemed like the Singaporean teams and the Aussie teams and the Chinese teams like were okay. It was really fucked for Paradox. I could see that from some of the tweets that they put out, but I know they forfeited their second game because they didn't want to play, and then Vertex seemed to actually have an okay time once they had spoken to the guy from One Code and he'd sort of done something with the routing, or I don't know. The other thing to note was that all the players were provided VPNs, and not all of them had that installed. Not all of them had that working, so I don't know how big of a difference that would have made. So it might not all have been on, the TO or the server or whatever it was.
I mean, the guns disappearing is
well,
that's
yes, the adminning of the server, whatever, that was terrible. But that could be a pretty easy fix, I think. End of the day, I did that first day, which got cancelled. And I was like, thank fuck, because I was like 3 hours into a broadcast and I'd casted half a game of Counter-Strike. I was pretty done by that point. We come to the second day, and the second day went relatively smoothly. I think some of the results were a little bit weird, partly because the Mongolian teams were really getting fucked. Like if you look at those first couple of days, like D13 lost to some team that you've never even heard of, really. And there was a couple of other ones where like tier 2 or tier 3 ANZ teams were beating some of the Mongolian teams. I was like, it was a good game by the Aussie boys. I'll give them that, but I don't know that the Mongolian teams were at full strength. And then I left because I had another event in Melbourne, so I wasn't there for days 3 and 4. And then I came back for day 5, which was the grand final. And when we did the grand final, things seemed to be fine. So I don't know what it was that they had sorted out by that point in time. But we got into that grand final. It was Lin Vision versus D13, and things went relatively smoothly. So the only real takeaway I have from that tournament was like, yeah, it was a shit show, but things got better. So I'm kind of prepared to give it a second chance. Do you know what I mean? And maybe that's just me because I'm biased and I want to see this kind of thing succeed. And I really like Asian Counter-Strike. And I feel like this might actually be something that could save Asian CS, if it's not already dead. But I would like to see it happen again. And I would like to see the things that went wrong, which were quite easy fixes, be fixed. And even after having spoken to some of the players and some of the teams, and I talked to some of the guys from Vertex, and they said actually it was playable, and I was like, oh, that's kind of surprising after what I saw on day 1, because I thought everyone was just going to rage quit this tournament, and some teams did, but the teams that stayed kind of were like, oh, it wasn't as bad, and it was actually workable. It was like 60 ping for the Aussies or something like that. So I'd like to see it happen again, but I'd like to see a CS admin. I'd like to see the servers sorted before the tournament, because it just like everyone will look at that first day and that's the first impression you get. I mean, we had a good laugh, I'll say that much. But if you look at the first day versus the final day, it's a huge difference. So I don't want people to look at that first day and go, that's the whole tournament, and then disregard it completely.
I think that happens a lot though. Like there's even been like a couple of like majors where like the first day's been a fuck fest and everyone just remembers it as a bit of a clusterfuck. Even if it like substantially improved by the end of that. So sometimes that's how it goes. I think it is a massive opportunity for potential though. I mean, we've already discussed why previously in like other podcasts and whatnot. So look, if the servers are working pretty well, I'd almost just like, those servers to be used for like some other competition, like something like get a company that's endemic to esports and make something exciting happen that has the right marketing and has the right budget behind it, and something like, imagine like, I don't know, like the fucking like DreamHack Pan Asian fucking challenge or some shit like that. I don't know, like some, market it with some, endemic to esports brand that has the reach and whatnot, give it a decent prize pool, and those guys can just be in charge of the server or whatever. I think it needs to be like a partnership thing rather than, and this is a thing, it's a similar thing for even like an epicenter or something like that. It's like, why are you trying to do things that you don't normally do when there's people who are very good at it that you can just go and get? So I don't know.
Yeah, and like it was actually a pretty good prize pool as well. I think most of it, if not all of it, was funded by OneCode / Hyperion servers, which was like obviously the server provider. Like the whole point of this tournament, to my understanding, was to sort of showcase the server. Now, obviously, day one wasn't a very good showcase of the server, but day 5 might have been a pretty decent showcase of the server. Which, you know, if the server was fucked on day 1 and there was admins that knew what they were doing, maybe some of it could have kind of been avoided or whatever. But you can't have both in a way. But all I'm saying is like there was a fair bit of money kind of thrown at this tournament, and I don't want it to kind of go up in smoke. Like $17,500 prize pool. You look at that, and that's like for these fucking top 4 DreamHack ESL tournaments, you have like maybe 20K, I think. So it's not far off that. And this is from a TO and a company that have not ever really done much in Counter-Strike at all. So everyone fucks up their first few tournaments. I remember some of the early tournaments that we did, you know, back in the day, like they were shit shows as well. And people just learn. So hopefully, you know, we have a second crack and things go well. Anyway, we are really running over time, as I've said a couple of times this show. So let's move on from that. Obviously, results aside, you know, Bleh, you kind of touched on that. Like Limvision won, D13 came second. I think that those were all pretty expected. NKT did pretty well. Huatai also did really well, better than I expected them to. And I guess the only other thing to touch on was maybe I was a little bit disappointed with the results that the Aussie teams got. I thought maybe one of them might be able to push for a slightly higher placing than what was achieved overall, which I think was 7th, 8th was the highest placing for an Aussie team. I thought maybe Vertex or Paradox might be able to get up into that next tier bracket. But I did say I didn't think that they were a top 4 team at that tournament. So maybe that was acceptable. Anyways, let's move on. This one's a bit of quote-unquote drama. I don't feel like it's really been that much of a drama, but there was a bit of a discussion on Twitter earlier this week from Order. Now, Ricky put out a tweet where he said, why are we being told that AU and Asia can't go overseas for the 5th time being cancelled on? Meanwhile, I see this. Am I missing something here? And he had Renegades basically at Cologne in his tweet. Because they obviously got announced as one of the teams that would be competing there. And so then Gomez, who is the manager for Order, sort of followed up, and he sort of took the reins on this discussion. He said 2 weeks before the final, I messaged ESL to find out if it's going ahead. That is referring to the ESL National Championship, which you covered, I believe, Bleh. Order was supposed to be at that tournament because they won ANZ champs. He said we would need to, whatever we needed to book, blah, blah, blah. They replied and said that they'll look into it and get back to me. We won, i.e. Order won, and then he checked Liquipedia, and there was normally it'll say like the slot for the winner. That was like striked through, and he couldn't find the source article. He said, I asked again, and they confirmed the international slots were removed, and the tournament is now online, not LAN anymore. Still waiting to hear back. I assume because IEM Summit is LAN, they can try a bit harder. That's obviously referring to Renegades getting taken over to Cologne. Whereas the National Championships finals was online, and therefore it wasn't really feasible. He said, I think I understand, but I'm waiting clarification. So basically, the TLDR is, because that's all a bit confusing, I'm sure I haven't explained it very well. The TLDR is Order won ANZ champs, and as a result of winning ANZ champs, they should have been able to play in the National Championship Global Playoffs, which has already happened. Essentially, they were not offered that position, and when they sort of looked to follow it up, it seemed like many of the traces had been removed, as in the source article was removed, the information was essentially removed. It was like that slot didn't really exist. I don't think it was necessarily hidden, because on Liquipedia, like, it's still there. You can look at it. There's a strike through the spot. So the spot still existed in a way, but they've said it's no longer available in a way for the ANZ champs thing. So basically what happened was that the international teams that were outside of like Europe that would have been able to go to that tournament were not extended an invite. And as a result, Order was pretty pissed about that, I guess, which is fair enough. Because, you know, for a team like Order, who doesn't get that many international opportunities, they would have, I'm sure, liked to have attended. So I don't really know what happened here, but that's basically the TLDR. And so in the end, I guess the question is, like, does Order get compensated for that? Because in theory, they won the tournament. That it was advertised as having an international slot. You know, we didn't talk about it on the broadcast. I think there was perhaps something said where it was like, well, we're not really sure if they'll be able to go. So let's just not mention it. I can't even really remember back that far, to be honest. But I don't remember ever really saying on the broadcast this has an international qualifier attached. But I can remember that there was like some discussions around that. And it was sort of like a known thing, but it wasn't really a discussed thing, which I suppose is a big deal for teams. Order kind of got cucked a little bit, it seems like.
I feel it's it's just unfortunate, but I also feel like it's mainly because, with the entire travel thing still being a problem, right? Like to look at what's happening right now as well. So yeah, it's just unfortunate. I was aware that the global playoffs were supposed to have, but it's called the global playoffs, right? Like supposed to have teams coming in for who won from Asia, from EU, and all of that. Sorry, from Australia as well. But I do remember, while doing the desk as well, that we were informed by ESL, to talk a little bit about how the next global playoffs is going to be, where it's going to be teams coming in from all around the world, how it's going to be LAN and everything. So it was the original plan, but I'm assuming that due to logistical issues or the current issues we're all facing right now, maybe that's why they had to scrap it. It is unfortunate, but I don't think it was like, in any way trying to fuck over Order or anything. It's just the way
it wasn't even just Order, by the way. There was like, I looked and there was like a Brazilian national championship, which I don't know actually happened. And there was also a Vietnamese national championships, which did happen, but that team also did not attend. So there was supposed to be 3 other teams. I don't know if that was just slots that were cut or if they were replaced by European teams. I didn't actually watch the national championship playoffs, finals, whatever it was. I probably would have if Order was playing, but I think the main problem for me was like, it seems like Order didn't really know, like they played that final kind of assuming that the slot was still there. And then after that, they did a few more inquiries. As I understand, they had inquired prior to that final in the weeks leading up to it as well, saying, hey, if we win, what do we need to do? And then that was when the response came back, we're looking into it, whatever. But there was no like, there is no international spot for this anymore. So they kind of had to chase that information themselves, which I think is kind of not really very good.
That's not ideal. Yeah.
So someone needs to sort of let them know prior, or at least say, hey, listen, this is what's happened. It's being moved online. What do you think? Because from, what I can see, they still wanted to play. Like, even if it was online, they might have gone. Do you know what I mean? Even because like you can get out of Australia. Like we're not fucking, I don't know about what your travel situation is like, Bleh, but I'm sure that
we're fucked.
India's
We're fucked.
Probably
you guys
the worst place.
fucked.
Like, can you travel out of India to anywhere at this point in time? I'm saying maybe not.
Right now, no, I can't. I literally cannot.
So we can literally go anywhere we want, really, because Australia is fine. There's obviously quarantine involved and all that sort of stuff. But like, as a general rule, you can do it. Australian teams have done it. Like, there was an Aussie team at the League of Legends MSI, which was like a month ago, obviously a couple of weeks before the Valorant tournament, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. There was a League of Legends team in China. Renegades has obviously played overseas as well, so it's like the precedent is there for Counter-Strike too. So I think that's another problem that Order like sort of brought up. They said like, well, why is it rules for thee and rules for me? That doesn't seem to be particularly fair. So it just seems like a bit of a whole convoluted kind of a thing. And I think it's more of a matter of circumstance that's unfortunately kind of cucked Order a little bit, but things could have definitely been done differently. So yeah.
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, it's like a communication problem. And sometimes the communication has been good. And, you might look at like Ricky or going on Twitter and whatnot, or people talking about this in public. You have to understand the context that this is not the first time. These guys have been playing ANZ champs and stuff like that. I remember we used to have like a DreamHack spot or something like that they had on offer, and that got cancelled. There just needs to be clear communication about what's happening. And I understand that it's hard when like logistically everything is changing all of the time, but exactly like you said, there's some precedent there that they are able to travel and they are able to have these opportunities. And when you talk about this national championship, when I look at the like level of teams there, like there's obviously very, very competitive teams that are European, and there's no guarantee that Order would make it through like that kind of opposition. Like, there's some pretty quality teams from like a premier level in Europe, which you can't fuck with. Like, you know, teams like Endpoint and Sprout and LDL. I mean, I'm surprised LDLC won that event, to be honest. Like, I would not have picked them as a favorite. But you know, like, it's not outside the realms of possibility that a team with players of Order's caliber could perform well at an event like that and could take a top 2 spot. And like, I'm looking at the first and second place prize. That's more opportunities in Europe and whatnot. Like,
that's the kind of thing that snowballs you, like what happened with Renegades.
Yes,
you win one or two of these things, and all of a sudden you're like in all of them. And exactly. It's so hard for Aussie teams to get that. So missing the opportunity is a big deal.
And I mean, just think about Renegades last year in DreamHack Leipzig. Yeah, just look at it, right? Like, we see these guys coming out and we're like, all right, what are they going to do? They reach the finals to beat like all the Danish teams. They did such a fantastic job over there. It's just unfortunate that, you know, Corona came in. But Dexter's performance there is what eventually led him to be in mouse sports right now, just fucking everyone, you know, packing everyone's shit in right there, right? It can happen. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and I think Order is getting to be a more and more quality team. And you have to understand, like, the guys in this team, like Ricky and Yusilo and whatnot, they want to go overseas. Like, they're getting on in their career a little bit. Like, they're getting a little bit older. And you've got some guys who, you know, like Vexite, for example, who are like really young talents that are essentially getting like hard skill capped, like ceiling capped in Oceania. This team is put together not to play in this region, like to go overseas and actually seize these opportunities and do well. And the longer and longer that goes on, you know, the more demotivated that they are. And it's different to, like, look, I would say in some regions, like some national championships, the level is not that professional. And maybe the teams would not even have a chance at an event like this, to be honest. But I generally think that Order is quite a quality team. They have a very good organization behind them. They've got people with their heads screwed on right. They are literally made for this purpose, and they already have all kinds of teams that have gone overseas in other esports. So, you know, it sucks that they keep not being able to seize these opportunities that they think that they're grinding for, you know?
Yeah. Anyways, let's move on from that, and let's move on to something a little bit more fun. We talked about Skybox earlier, and now we've got Skybox available. So hopefully you guys can see what's on the screen right now.
Why are these pictures a thing?
Because, I mean, it's, you know, you just need to... You need to know this is us doing Skybox. And
oh my god, Skybox with Tyloo and Invictus. I'm excited now.
Yeah, I'm sure
I'm actually excited.
I'm sure you've actually seen this clip before, Bleh, because I think I took it from your Twitter. But anyway, that'll just be the little taste test for you.
What the USP round? Yeah, it's a USP round.
What we're going to do today...
Don't spoil. No spoilers.
What we're going to do today is we are going to teach you how to play an anti-eco. And we're going to do so with the help of two of the best teams in Asia. So, Pilski, I got a few questions for you. And the main one is, what are the key things that you should do on an anti-eco?
So, if you're on the T side of an anti-eco, your whole purpose is, you know, that the other team has lackluster weaponry and has got a very, very low percentage chance of winning the round. So you want to play as safe as possible, and you want to maximize your percentage chances of winning the round without taking as many risks. And a lot of the time, that will lead to teams playing a pretty passive setup. Maybe they'll use their utility to take map control and things like that. And in general, you know, you usually want to just try to maximize your chances of the round without taking as many risks, and you usually should end up winning. You know, the other team's just got fucking pistols, you know? So on overpass, that might be like one guy outside of like Monster holding an angle, like maybe one guy in underpass just holding an angle, spotting the pixel gap, and then like a defensive party setup. Like, that's just an example of like an anti-eco setup. And then later on, you might go take map control into long A or something like that. That's a very, very common way to anti-eco and overpass.
All right, well, let's have a look quickly here at what the teams have to work with. Obviously, Tyloo, they've got a full belt of utility across everyone. Attacker's got an SMG, but that's fine. It's an anti-eco. Who really cares? For Invictus, well, they've only got the USPs. There's one flash here for Viva. Okay, so what do we want to see from Tyloo? We want to see that util usage. We want to see that playstyle that Pilski talked about. We want to see that they're going to be able to methodically work their way through this round.
Yeah. passive, patient, methodical. You know, these are things that you want to be on an anti-eco.
All right. How about we just roll the clip here and we'll learn how to play an anti-eco from one of the best teams in Asia, Tyloo.
All right. So you can see they're rolling out a spawn. Oh, it's looking pretty good. One player towards monster. One's going to go down the ladder in connector, and then 3 towards party. And then they just start sending it.
Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to very importantly watch what happens here for Summer. He's walking down connector, as you said. Somebody is walking his way towards monster tunnel. It's kind of like what you said, right, Pilski, where you just want them to make sure that they're, in those positions. These 3 guys can play together, holding fountain. But they send it, right? So keep an eye on Summer's position, keep an eye on somebody's position, and see what happens up the top here. There's 1 flash for Viva. I can't use my mouse properly. There we go. 1 flash for Viva. And let's see what happens. So the flash goes over. Dan King and Attacker right here are both fully flashed. Slowly is kind of like half flashed on the corner. You have the peak coming through from these 4 guys on Invictus, and they basically just fucking dominate Slowly and Attacker. Now, Slowly, he kind of whiffed a little bit. He needed to be the guy because he was sort of the only one that was actually anti-flash. The other 2 were fully flashed. So a very nice pop flash actually from Viva. But basically, these guys are fucked up the top. Now, let's just check in with our friends Summer and somebody and see where they've ended up. Now, we are, remember, like 20 seconds into the round. Where is somebody? He's already out of the monster tunnel. He's just chilling, having a good time, doing what he does. Still sending it. And what else happens here? Oh, we've got sound. I didn't even know that happened. We've got Summer who, for some reason, if we go back here, right? You've just lost 3 players up here. All five CTs.
I want to literally go a second back. Go like a second back before anyone even dies, before the flash even goes off. Look at them. They're already halfway through running these positions.
Yeah,
like he's already halfway out monster before the flash has even come out. Like he's just sending it by himself. No one's even died yet. No flash has even gone off yet. There's no information that, because you could say, oh, he knew that they were all party. Like that's why he's gone out monster. No, dude, no. He's already halfway through sending it into the site.
Yeah. All right, and then what ends up happening is Summer, after these guys die, I really love that he just continues to go up here.
It's a 1v5.
And he wants to take the 1v5. Essentially wants to take a 1v5. I'm not really sure why. Like, okay, the bomb's dropped here somewhere, probably. But what's he doing?
Just wait for your teammate. Hold an angle.
Somebody's now like, oh, okay, I guess I'll just play a 1v4. That seems fine. Anyway, we run the rest of the round out. And, no surprises that Invictus wins. Now, I may have broken things on Skybox a little bit, and I don't think you guys were able to see exactly what I could see, which was all of the HUD elements. So when I was talking about the fucking shit,
you could see it. I could see it.
Okay, that's good. Because I pressed a button and everything went fucked. I hope things worked. Anyway, that's Skybox. So thanks Skybox for letting us do that. Very professional. Hopefully we'll have some more important, more analytical ones in the future. That one was just a little bit of fun and a bit of a taste test for what you can hopefully expect to see in the future.
People don't want analysis, Jordan.
They just want the
memes. Counter-Strike watchers have never wanted actual quality analysis. I can tell you that for a fact. But
that's a good point.
Boring.
The memes is where it's at. Watching a team like Tyloo, who have now somebody's been on Tyloo for how many years now?
5
or more? Or is it more than that? Hold on. Somebody Tyloo. I want to look it up. Somebody CSGO. Because I want to know how many years somebody has been losing anti-ecos for. He's been since 2013. He's been on
Holy
Tyloo. We're talking 7 or 8 years now.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Wait. 2013 is when
2015,
he was active.
2015.
Sorry, 2015. So literally 6 years.
Literally 6 years
on the team
this April.
Losing fucking anti-ecos like that. He's still sending it up on to the big side.
You know what the worst part was? I tweeted that out, like, CSGO Asian clip of the week. And a couple of dudes are like, I don't see what Tyloo did wrong there. That was just a great route from Invictus.
It was. Don't get me wrong.
It was.
Don't get me
wrong. That was a
wrong.
great flash.
That was a great
play.
flash, and it was great timing. But the Tyloo players at no point did they like if I was to run an anti-eco T-side overpass, like I said, you have one guy outside monster spotting. By the way, and he's literally all the way back, right? Like near the fence. And then you got one guy bottom of connector on the pixel gap. All right. And then you have like a defensive party setup, like maybe 2 on the boost watching for a long push and like 1 in the stairs, like the pit, whatever, just jump spotting and ready to throw util. If they pop flash party and you're in that position, the monster guy can like peg a flash over the hedge and you fucking destroy them. Or like you could just get some utility out of party, out of the like playground area or whatever. Like there's a million ways to win that round. But it's almost like they're on autopilot, just fucking all
Map
rushing
control. Get that map control.
Like it just makes no sense. I don't know. Anyway.
Oh god, I love and hate Tyloo. Anyway, yeah.
So hopefully there'll be more clips for us to sort of look at. By the way, if you're keen to see us look at a clip, if you've got one that you've seen that you think we would find amusing, please feel free to, send a message on YouTube or
I don't want this to be a real analysis thing. Like I don't want to do real analysis.
We should meme it. We should meme.
Yeah.
We'll see we'll see where it goes. We're going to try and do a Skybox segment in most, if not all, of the shows, and sort of see how we go. We'll see how that sort of all pans out. Anyway, back to regular scheduled programming. We're now into the roster moves section, and this one was a surprise to me. Score has stepped down from D13. So obviously this was an article that was put out by CSGO to Asia earlier this week, and I'm a bit surprised by this news, to be honest, because I always thought Score was one of the the up and coming talents of Mongolia. So I don't know, it doesn't seem to say whether or not he's moving to another team, whether he's moving to another game, what he's doing. It just says he stepped down of his own volition, and there's no word as to what's going to happen to his future. Now, like I said, I'm a bit surprised because I would think that the only reason that Score would leave D13 would be to move to a better team. But I don't know what that team would be, if there would be a team.
Look, listen. Hear me out here, right?
Okay.
Got Score. Pick up Blitz from Checkmate. Okay?
Okay.
And then kick a couple out from that renewal team. Boom, you had the best team in Mongolia. Probably a top 3 team in
Well, the thing is, they should already have the best team in Mongolia.
Well, well, not really doing anything, are they right now? Listen, just get rid of Nuez at 9. Get on Score. Look, Score is probably right now the best player from Mongolia. He is Machinegun and Zilkenberg reborn in a 17-year-old body. Like, the guy is genuinely tier 1, at least for Asia. I feel like any team who picks him up, heck man, fuck it. Like, even for NKT, I'm like, just I'd be okay with them cutting one of their players and picking him up. Apart from Urkas. Urkas obviously is not in conversation here. But this guy is a beast. Like, any team should be looking to snatch him up right now. I don't know why no one is.
So it's interesting that you mention NKT because, and this is complete speculation. I haven't spoken to any of them, but I actually think it could be NKT. And I was fucking spot on with the NKT roster. When I was talking to Impression, you go back, look at in retrospect with Impression, I called that exact roster and I didn't have any idea. By the way, just saying. If I get this one wrong, whatever. No one will remember that. Everyone remembers when you get things right. All I saw was NKT people on Facebook, sharing this fucking news. So I'm like, that's weird. So Impression shared it.
You got the Facebook leaks, dog. What the fuck? Who goes on Facebook
leaks in 2021?
Yeah, and MYM. I don't even know if MYM is still involved with NKT. I think he is.
Yeah, maybe. He is. He's still a coach.
It might not have been MYM. It might have been their manager. Either way, it was either the coach or the manager also shared that. So I was just like,
So who would leave, Zine or CBBK? Because both their regions.
Oh, I think that ties into something we'll talk about in a minute.
Okay. So if you look at Zine, that's South Korea, obviously, and CBBK, Thailand. Both these countries are doing very, very well in Valorant, right?
That is true.
even though I would hate to see Zion leave Counter-Strike, the last standing member representing Counter-Strike from South Korea, I wouldn't be surprised if he left and joined, with this recent shuffles taking place with, Vision Strikers and all the Valorant teams in Korea. I wouldn't be surprised to see him getting picked up. The guy is a beast, and I'm very sure he'll transition very, very smoothly into the game, considering he has a lot of his ex-teammates playing that game at the highest levels right now. CBBK as well. You look at Thailand, there's so many teams playing there right now in Valorant. So which one's going to leave? If I don't think it's going to be Orcast. I don't think it's going to be Impression or Execute. But if it is going to be Zion and CBBK leaving, Score would be, I would say, would be even be an upgrade. The guy is young, he's hungry, he's looking for more. So yeah.
Well, more importantly, Pilski, you talked a lot about the play styles of players in NKT when that roster was first put together. Would Score, if he replaces Zion or CBBK, alleviate some of those concerns for you around that roster?
Yeah, I guess a little bit. I mean, I think that certain players are restricted by their play styles and might be like a little bit more on the passive or aggressive side. When I look at Score as a player, I actually don't think he suffers from those same limitations. I genuinely think that Score can fulfill any role and be very, very good. And I think Score is like, he can be a playmaker. He can be a clutch player in late round. Like, he can do almost anything. He's just phenomenally skilled. So, exactly like Blair said, like if you can get Score, you just get him. Like, he's just that good.
All right. Well, we could be completely off base. It could actually just be Scores taking a break from CS or something. But I'm calling NKT. So we'll see if that ends up being correct in a couple of weeks, and if it is, then I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about in that respect. But let's jump on from that topic. There's not really too much more to say about what could potentially happen there without seeing any further information coming to light. Now, we did mention last week or last show that we would try to start covering some of the Valorant stuff, and obviously with the Valorant Masters in Reykjavik now having been completed, now's probably a good time for us to dip our toes really for the first time into Valorant, right? We've sort of speculated, talked about teams moving over, players moving over, that kind of thing, but it's always been with that CS mindset, and what that means for Counter-Strike, rather than just talking about Valorant in the Asian region as a whole. So this is now essentially a Valorant podcast. If you're interested in that, keep watching. If you're not, you can jump forward. There was one viewer question this week, which was a CS related question. There'll be timestamps down below. But for now, we'll talk about Valorant. And what we wanted to talk about, obviously, was Valorant Masters. And Nuturn did really, really well. So I think that was the main sort of takeaway. They came third at that event. Eventually losing to Fnatic in the lower bracket. Crazy Raccoon and X10 Esports, the other two teams from Asia, were not quite as successful. It was 9th, 10th for Crazy Raccoon, which, if I'm not incorrect, was the Japanese team.
Half Japanese, half Korean.
Well, yeah, that's true. But they came through the Japanese region. Funnily enough, not Absolute Jupiter. Funny how that works out. And then X10 Esports, which is the Thai roster coming through from the SEA side of things. And, there's quite a few interesting SEA teams, I'm sure, that we could talk about, but probably at another time. But so, 9th, 10th for Crazy Raccoon, 7th, 8th for X10. Neither of them really performed to a crazy level. But it's all about Nuturn. It's all about the Korean Valorant that we wanted to talk about. So, Pilski, I mean, I know you've been really enjoying Valorant of late. I'm sure you were tuning into most of these games and quite excited with what you saw.
Yeah, definitely. I thought they played quite well considering the teams there, but I exactly what I expected. Like, it's very hard to predict with like the collision of all these regions what the results were going to be. And I think that Nuturn, I think they might have overperformed in some of the games for sure. Like, there was some fucking weird ass series where like there was literally 2 series where Nuturn got fucking slapped on the first map, like 13-4 or 13-5. And I think the majority of people would have been like, that's them done. I remember there was the first series that they won in that regard. I remember they got slapped like 13-3 or 13-5 or something on the first map. And I literally was like, well, that's enough of that. I don't want to see my boys get massacred in the second map as well. And I just didn't watch. And then I went to sleep. And tuned in the next morning to the results, and they like reverse swept. So yeah, like Nuturn did very, very well. X10 and Crazy Raccoon, they were all right. I think those rosters maybe could have like it's interesting because like our SEA was like a bit of a clusterfuck. You didn't know who was going to come through, but actually like some people would have said like obviously Nuturn upsetting Vision Strikers was like to make it to Reykjavik was a bit like how you going. You would have probably tipped Vision Strikers, and then Crazy Raccoon they'd been beating Jupiter for a while, so I guess that was a little bit more expected. Like even both of those guys were going like back and forth, but Crazy Raccoon I think had already beaten them in a few like of the VOT kind of events or whatever you want to call them, national events.
The fact that Jupiter didn't qualify takes me back 12 months or 6 months or whenever it was that they made that swap, and everyone was like, Japanese Valorant's fucking sick.
Yes.
And I was like,
literally like people were like hyping them up, looking at all the clips and like saying, oh, this guy's aim sick, like all this stuff, blah blah blah. And I was literally watching them and I'm like, people like have no like critical thinking skills. Like I'm watching all of these clips and I'm watching like the teams they're playing. And I'm like, what is this team doing? They're like running out like an area of the map like one at a time with no utility. And Laz is literally just like one being people like it's fucking bot, like some kind of bot simulation practice. Like,
bots.
5 bots are gonna run around this corner and you're just gonna see how fast you can shoot them all. Fucking crazy. Something like that. Like, yeah, I just didn't think that they're going to be that great. But to be fair, I did not expect another team to best them in that region. So I was very impressed at the progression in that regard. And it's interesting that in general, the Korean and the Japanese scene seems to be quite close. Like I see Korean players tweeting stuff in Japanese all the time and like them interacting a lot on Twitter, which is like there like seems to be some level of camaraderie. And this Crazy Raccoon team, like I've said, seems to be half Korean, half Japanese. So that's a cool mix that I'm interested to see if that continues.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is good to see the players that you don't necessarily recognize starting to come through. Like it's always pretty telling when you watch a new esport and players jump ship and move over and they're the best in the region for 12 months. But then they sort of seem to start to fall off a little bit. And that's when you kind of know the esport is starting to come into its own rather than being like an offshoot, in this case from Counter-Strike. But, you know, we look at PUBG and Apex Legends and Overwatch and all that. Or, you know, Overwatch had TF2 players that came across. Apex Legends had Overwatch players that came across, that kind of thing. So now we've got past that point where the Counter-Strike pros are just better because they're Counter-Strike pros, and we're now getting to the point where maybe some of the other games, like I've seen Overwatch players as well. Patapan, I think, is in that X10 team. He was an Overwatch pro, you know, coming across and having some success, and you're starting to see just names that maybe have endemically come through from Valorant being quite successful as well. But Bleh, I mean, what did you think? I know obviously you had a lot to say on Twitter about Nuturn and in particular about Solo, which is something that we do want to talk about in a little bit as well. But I'm sure, again, you were pretty pleased to see those results. And, you know, the only thing I will say to this point is that it's sad in a way that it's happening in Valorant when it could have happened in Counter-Strike. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is kind of tragic that ways, but you got to look at how it was, right? When CSGO came out, the esports as a whole was in a very different world altogether, right? You had a league there, you had Dota 2 kind of starting to come into its own. Counter-Strike 1.6 was dying. IEM had fucking dropped Counter-Strike as a title as well. Remember when that took place too? So CS was in like, I remember people talking about shooters being a dying genre. You know, funny as it is when you think about it right now. So when CSGO came out, our good old the old guard of Counter-Strike in who played 1.6, that was never really Source in Asia, but the ones who played 1.6, some of the Singaporean guys used to play Source, players like Striker X, for example. Most of them had retired or they'd moved on to games like Counter-Strike Online. So Solo and Glow and Perry are the project KR guys. You know, I think they were called Women Fox by the time they retired. They'd gone for their military service. They'd come back. They started playing CS Online, which was the game over there. And if you remember, they came into Counter CS:GO very, very late. They came to CS:GO in 2015, thereabouts, right? And they immediately became a top 3 team. That's how good they were as competitors at understanding how this game works. And unfortunately for CS, because for CS:GO in Asia, 99% of players who started playing CSGO were starting from scratch. They didn't have any 1.6 experience, or if they had it, it was playing at like super low levels, playing pugs and, some small tournaments here and there. So they were literally starting from scratch. While if you look at NA and EU, it was the OG 1.6, and CS source legends, champions were transitioning directly over. That didn't happen in CSGO. However, if you look at Valorant, now, it was launched with a lot of hype as well, right? It's a brand new game and all that stuff. And at least with CSGO, like, even though, yes, we don't have too many veterans around, successful veterans, let's put it that way. Although I know we have a lot of, have Tyloo and all these guys. The fact that Solo and Glow and, and Perry and all these guys, they remain, I feel, was very impactful for Valorant in Korea. You look at all these, all the investment coming in, the moment the game comes out, immediate, investment coming in, new orgs coming out, and then immediately putting the money. And then you have players like Solo, like Perry, like, listen, beaten teams. We've beaten world champions 15 years back. We can do it again, right? They come on in. Yes, it was a bit of a surprise for me that Nuturn qualified. I felt like Vision Strikers would have done more damage, but you could still see some cool things coming out from them. For X10 and for Crazy Raccoons, look, they tried their best, congratulations. They were at least able to qualify, but I wasn't too surprised with the results, right? Like, I always felt like the SEA and even the Japanese guys, when I look at some of the games, they play some of the VODs, it was Counter-Strike all over again, right? It was just like a run and gun, no real thought being applied. There was lack of teamwork, a lot of mistakes being made. But look at the Koreans, when you see them really apply, you can see the elements of the MVP PK thing coming out, right? The MVP PK genius, so to speak, coming to play here. And like you mentioned, they lose the first game, and then they just grinded out a reverse sweep. I think it was against. It was against
twice. They did it once
Sharks.
against V1, and then they did it once against Sharks. I think, yeah.
And they even were able to get the second map against, was it Fnatic? Yeah, I think it was against Fnatic, right? So it comes down a lot to the fact that I believe, having a player like Solo in the server, man, like, and people like Perry, like, it just, there's so much experience with them that they don't choke. They don't choke at all, which I feel was a really cool thing for me to see personally. And bear in mind, even Vision Strikers, they have some of the veterans behind the scenes as well. And secondly, I actually saw a couple of some cool approaches to the game. Like, you look at the pistol rounds on the CT side or the defending side, right? You saw how they were being so aggressive. They weren't like, holding onto the sides, where pistol rounds, honestly, in Valorant, I feel, is much more harder than it is in Counter-Strike. I feel it's even more RNG. But they were like taking matters into their own hand. They were pushing towards pushing the A side, they're pushing the B side. They were trying to catch the attacking side off guard, which I feel it's a pretty cool thing. No one really was doing that in the tournament. I feel it was Nuturn were the only team who were really trying that as like a strat. So you can see cool new things coming out, right? Not just following the trend, not just trying to replicate what the NA and the EU teams are trying to do. And I feel that was a really good sign. Sure, in the end, they were not able to, get a top 2 placing. They got banged out in the final map and all of that. But I still feel, considering Nuturn, where I really feel Vision Strikers would have done more damage, right? But if Nuturn could do this much, and considering how that could kind of like act as a catalyst for the entire Korean scene, I'm excited. I'm not necessarily excited for the Asian scene as a whole, but if the Korean scene does well, there has to be a trickle-down effect. There has to be other teams in the region getting excited about it. And of course, if they practice against each other, it should pan out. So yeah, looking at it from an FPS fanboy-ish standpoint, I'm very happy to see a lot of these players like Lakia, for example. I remember when he used to play, CSGO, struggling in, the third best or the fourth best team in South Korea. And for him to like really like shine and have his clutch moments and everything, it was for me a very, very cool feeling altogether to watch Nuturn and all these the newbies as well as the veterans in that team do so well.
It was pretty vindicating, I think. Having spoken about Asian Counter-Strike and these players for such a long time, saying that they can do something if the opportunities are there for them to actually be able to do it, even if it is in a different game. It does make me feel pretty happy in a way.
It's happy and sad. It's bittersweet.
It's happy and sad because what if MVP would have gone and played overseas and gotten third place at some fucking international tournament? That would have been sick. But
yeah, the tragedy, the tragedy, right? You look at those 5 veterans. You look at Glow. You look at Perry. You look at Sol. You look at these guys. And you look at them, they're distributed between 2 teams, right? Vision Strikers and and Nuturn, and they have these young stars around them. That wasn't the case when it came to CSGO. When it came to CSGO, the first couple of years, it was just these 5 boomers just sticking together, not really playing with Zion and Zeta. And when that did happen, it was, I feel, a little too late by that point in time.
Yeah.
If it happened earlier, Elfish, 100% agree with you. It could have been really exciting.
I know. I mean, we are getting ahead of ourselves. This is what Pilski's going to say. It's like, well, there was no chance in Counter-Strike.
I could literally probably do a 3 or 4 hour podcast on this one topic, and so it's hard to like pick one thing that I want to say. But just to play devil's advocate, because I like just by default, I agree with everything that you guys are saying, and I love these players as well. But I play devil's advocate. I will say that the only team that could have ever achieved anything like that and was on the verge of doing it was the MVP PK that finally upset Tyloo and became #1 in the region and then broke apart way too early. I don't think any of the other teams would have had potential to do that. The one with Zion and Zeta, as well as a little bit of veteran in it with Stacks, who now plays for Vision Strikers, obviously. Number 2, to play devil's advocate to these results, they had a very favorable run through the bracket. They played Sharks, and then they played a V1 that had just upset Liquid, who were underperforming at that event, and people would have said was arguably the best team in Europe, up there with Fnatic, and was pinned by everybody as favorites for the event. They got upset by version 1. So arguably Nuturn placing 3rd is a product of them having a favorable run through the upper bracket and then, being able to reverse sweep a team like version 1 who were using a stand-in and playing a little bit like loose or whatever, which may have affected their consistency. Then they went on and got smashed by Sentinels, which everybody got smashed by Sentinels for the most part, except for Fnatic. And then they just dropped to lower bracket and got an automatic 3rd place. And they did take a map off Fnatic, like Blair said. But their run, if they had played Liquid, there's no guarantees that they should have been able to beat Liquid. Like, arguably, you could say Liquid should have been 3rd place in that tournament if they had played a little bit better. And it was a very weird tournament. Like, the same thing would never have happened in CS because there's just so many more barriers to making it to the top level of like a major tournament like you're seeing here. Whereas for Valorant, it's very artificial right now. Very artificial.
That was the point that I was going to make, is that like I think, the results are good. And it probably never would have happened in Counter-Strike just because all of the other teams are so far ahead.
They would have gone to the tournament in Europe where they played like fucking what are those teams in the national championship we were just talking about? Like Sprout and shit. Like they would have gone to that tournament and they would have lost.
Yeah.
They would never have made it to this.
So this is basically the conversation. I guess it's never gonna. I don't think there's a real clear-cut answer, right? Like it's coming down to like, what are we looking for in a tournament? Representation or the best teams in the world playing?
Well, this was actually a topic of discussion that I wanted to bring up, right? Because to me, you look at this and you think, okay, well, what could have happened if there was 2 Korean teams, coming from Asia instead of 3? What would have happened if there was an Australian team coming as well? And basically, the way that I look at it is obviously through a very similar lens to Counter-Strike, in that there's the Asian minors. And if there's anyone from Valorant watching this that doesn't know Counter-Strike, essentially what happens is you get the best teams from all around Asia, that includes ANZ in that umbrella, and then they play a tournament, a top 8 tournament, and the top 2 or top 3 from that then go to whatever the major might be. So in that instance, you might see the likes of the top 2 Korean teams, the top 2 Chinese teams, the top 2 Australian teams, and then the top, the rest is probably filled out from Southeast Asia, maybe Mongolia or whatever. And from there, you don't have these specific regions, like you need to get a team from Japan, you need to get a team from Southeast Asia, you need to get a team from Korea. You get whichever the best teams are, and that might be 2 teams coming through from, in this instance in Valorant, probably coming from Korea, or maybe even 3 teams from Korea, whatever it might end up being. So the question I had for both of you would be, is that an avenue that you would like to see in Valorant? Do you think that would be better than what it is currently? And in that case, does that even work in the Riot ecosystem? Because what we know about the Riot ecosystem is that every region is going to have its team. It happens in League of Legends. You get one from ANZ, you get one from Japan, you get one from Garena, which is like Southeast Asia. You get one from, the Koreans, or more than one, obviously from the Korean server. But you know what I mean? Like, I don't know that that's something that Riot's going to go for, but
I
what would
just
you
want to
like to see?
I just want to preempt that by saying like Riot had a golden opportunity to have 2 Korean teams at this event because this is a brand new game. There is no region that's better. Like, sure, you know, the EU fanboys going, oh, EU the best region, NA the best region, but there is no factual evidence that these teams are objectively better than the Korean teams because they have never played each other, right? They never have. Sure, you know, you can look at the demos, you can look at the VODs, you can look at it from an analytical standpoint. You're like, yeah, these teams are making too many mistakes. I agree with you on that, but Riot had the opportunity there to make it 2 Korean teams, at least initially. I feel like they could have potentially done that. Right, but instead they were biased kind of a little bit. Could be due to factual data because the teams are obviously, you know, they have a much more healthier scene altogether over there. But I feel like they could have had 2 Korean teams or maybe 1 extra Asian team of at this event. But anyway, coming back to what you said there, Elfish, I feel I personally. Look, I'm always torn, right? I want to see all the regions being represented and everything. I want, you know, because of that, like if you have, let's say, look at China, for example. Look at Lin Vision. They never get a fucking chance to play any fucking RMR because they have to fucking go up against Tyloo. Throw in Lin Vision in any other fucking country apart from China. They would be the team qualifying, right? Every single time. And they might even pull off the upset and be the number 1, number 2 team in Asia, at least when it comes to RMR events. So I don't think there's any clear-cut solution to it. I am not necessarily a fan of representation where, you know, one region's team is just going to get shit on. Because when I look at a Masters or a Major or something, I want to see the best of the fucking best. If that means 10 out of 10 teams are from, let's say, fucking the Nordic regions, and these are the 10 best teams in the world, I'm okay with it. I want to see the best play, right? But we can't really have that all the time. We still need to have a couple of teams coming on in from different regions altogether. So this is what I propose. Have the Asian minor. Try and give a little bit more slots to more powerful, more stronger regions. I think Counter-Strike has done a very good job when it comes to Asian minor representation overall, right? 2 from China, 2 from Australia. This time around, we've got to have 2 from Korea, maybe 3. I don't know. You know, we can figure that out. Have a bigger LAN over there. But then have close to equal representation at the final event. Don't have 1 slot for Asia. Don't have 2 slots for Asia. And then you have 4 for EU and 4 for NA. You know what I mean? Try and make it as cool as possible. Sure, I can understand why NA and EU would have a couple more extra slots, but don't make it like, you know, how it's been in Counter-Strike for the latter half of CSGO's professional life, so to speak, where it's like you have NA, you have EU, you have 1 for South America, you have 1 for Asia.
Yeah,
fuck the rest of the world.
Yeah, token invites.
Yeah, don't do token invites. Make it reasonable. Make it like 3 slots or something for each region. Give 4. Maybe 5 to NA or EU. You know, it's up to them. I think that would be the ideal approach here.
I mean, Pilski, I'm sure you have a lot to say on this topic because you're always all in on those kinds of things. Actually, what I would like to see, just quickly, is a situation where regions that perform would get extra slots. And I think this actually happened a little bit in the Asia minors. I can't remember, but I feel like I recall a period where like certain regions only had 1 slot and then they might have overperformed and then they got an extra slot, if that makes sense.
True.
So
yes.
I think that's
China. Like where you see like a Renegades, 100 Thieves like qualify for a main event after performing really well, and then Renegades come to the qualifier and perform well in that qualifier. You know, that's the way that they earn it. One team who finally earns that spot and like makes it, quote unquote, and then the next team starts to take the token invites and, you know, blah blah blah. And very, very rarely, I think we got, I mean, using Oceania example, you know, we got to a point where it was like Renegades and 100 Thieves had almost made that invite status at one point.
Yeah.
So that's like, but that's a very, very rare example, which kind of shows you that maybe the system doesn't really work.
Yeah, but like if what I'm saying is like maybe, you know, let's say we do the quote unquote Asia minor in Valorant, right? And you look at it and you say, okay, well, Korea is clearly the best region in Asia right now. Maybe at that minor, let's say it's 8 teams, then Korea gets 3 of those slots, right? And then Japan gets 1, Southeast Asia gets a couple, ANZ gets 1 or 2 or whatever the fuck it may be. And then let's say the Japanese team wins the Asia minor, or wins the Asia minor twice in a row. you think, okay,
So they get 3 slots.
maybe we're taking a slot off Korea and we're putting a slot over to Japan. Now it's 2
True,
slots for Korea, 2 slots
100%.
for... That's obviously all just theoretically. May not happen, obviously. But like, that's an
If it
ideal
does
one,
happen,
in my opinion.
I agree with you. You reward it. And also, like, I'll give it another example, which is the complete... It's the same thing, but it's from a different standpoint, where India used to have its own slot, because India, 1.3 billion people, a lot of players. It used to have its own slot in Asian minors, like direct slot, right? But every time they play, they just shit the bed, like terribly shit the bed. So what happened with the remaining the later Asian minors was just combine them with the rest of SCA. Listen, you got to beat SCA teams, then you got to qualify to SCA. I agree with that as well. So it can go either way, right?
Yeah, of course,
100%.
If
take
you
away
underperform,
slot
take the
or
slot away.
make it bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, look, it's way too like broad of an issue to get out to in this part of a podcast. This is another thing that it could be its own podcast. And I think just generally, I'll agree with what both of you said. It needs to be a mix of both of the systems, and it needs to have its own endemic circuit, I think. And that's obviously me like being a little bit biased, because like, let's be real, all of us work in Asia, and like our dream has always been like, fuck, imagine if we had an actual like circuit around here that was focused on here and actually connected properly to the main things. And if that was to happen, that's not going to happen in CS. That would happen in Valorant. If that was ever going to happen, it'd be Riot to do it.
A studio, an English studio out of Seoul. You guys down?
Yeah,
I'm sure there's already a couple of those that...
They've already got some Korean... I mean, I don't know if you were tuning into Korea, but you had some fucking Taste Toasters casting Valorant, which was, I mean, my favorite commentary duo ever. But obviously, they're not endemic to FPS games, so it's a bit interesting.
Anyways, that aside, yeah, like I think that is the ideal solution, and you sort of push that all the way up, right? You even go to the global tournaments and you say, okay, well, maybe EU's the best, and so in Players World, instead of them getting 3 slots, they get 4 slots, and then NA gets 3 slots, and Asia gets 3 slots. Whatever.
I'm already worried about that not being the case though, and not seeing proper inclusion of regions, because like for all those, there are probably most people aren't aware of this, but all I'll say is I want you to contrast what you see in Japan and Korea versus Southeast Asia or Oceania support, and look at the difference. That's all I'm going to say.
That's also a good point. That is also a good point.
It's like night and day.
Yeah, it's obviously a much broader issue.
Korea, top 3 at the major tournament, might be the best fucking league to play in. And then, or, SEA, for example, they didn't do as well.
Anyways, the other thing that we want to touch on is, again, we're getting pretty late into the evening now, was Solo and Glow. Now, Glow has retired from Valorant, and Solo is, quote-unquote, maybe retired. I think there was a little bit of confusion with Solo's statement at the press conference, and he said later on that the English translation wasn't exactly correct, and essentially he told his teammates that he would probably be considering that tournament his last tournament, and he's like leaning towards retirement, but he hasn't actually made a final decision. He did actually say he's going to make the decision in June, and we are now in June, so I suppose we'll be hearing about that sooner rather than later. And if he does retire, he said he wanted to stay on with the team as like a coach or whatever, which, to be fair, we know he's already done. Like, he essentially kind of retired from Counter-Strike and moved into a coaching position in Counter-Strike, and then when he moved to Valorant, he actually became a player again. So it's not without precedent for Solo in particular. But Pilski, is there anything you wanted to say for Glow or for Solo on this topic?
As for the Solo thing, I think that ties into NKT, because I've already heard. I heard that Zine has, in the past, I heard that Zine has had plenty of offers and opportunities to move to Valorant if he wanted to. Very good ones, supposedly. I think I read in that article that Solo said he will retire if Zine replaces him or something like that, if Zine moves to Valorant onto like Nuturn's roster. And that's not someone who's even like played officially in competitive Valorant. And going into Valorant, obviously, like the 2 hottest prospects were Zine and Zeta from Counter-Strike. One of them still playing Counter-Strike, and Zeta's in fucking Cloud9 in America. And everyone was like, literally like, who the fuck is this guy? This guy's sick. So it's an interesting one if that did happen. If Zion just needs to go to Valorant at this point. Like it's there's no way he should stick around in CS. He should go to Valorant because he could be a potential world champion in that game.
I can't believe I have to agree with you 100% on this. Like,
Yeah.
I can't believe you're telling Zion, the last bastion of South Korean Counter-Strike, saying, bro, you've held on for as long as you can, but don't fuck yourself over.
Like respect, but at the end of the day, you shouldn't be playing in a tournament where admins don't know how to start the fucking server.
I can tell you that if you played in Reykjavik and you dropped your gun, it would not disappear. That's all I'm saying. Okay?
Yeah. Like that's the difference. It's like, what tournament has NKT actually fucking played in? That's it. That's literally pretty much it. And it was that caliber of a tournament. Whereas he's got his mates that he's played on teams with in Counter-Strike that have all moved over to Valorant, and they're all
top three in the world.
Yeah, the
top three in the world.
Top 3 in the world. Definitely the top 2 best teams in Korea, which is a region everyone's fucking hyped about. There's support, there's money, there's fame. Like, you've seen these guys in Valorant, like, holy shit, this is an aside, but like I was like looking at Iron's stream the other day. Iron, the Aussie, who does he play for? Sonics or something? In Sonics. Valorant? Yeah, and like this guy was like maybe middle of the pack ANZ. Like he was in a top 4 team a couple of times, but he was never in the best team in ANZ in CS. And he wasn't a huge like personality or anything like that. I look at this guy on stream, he's getting like hundreds of viewers. It's crazy. Like, let me see how many Twitter followers he's got now. He's up to 4,300, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot for an Aussie, you know. It's going crazy.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think, look, this is a natural progression that we're seeing. Glow and Solo mechanically are not, and Perry as well. They don't measure up to the up and coming Valorant players at the moment. It's very, very clear from their gameplay. But in saying that, Nuturn would never have had this result if they didn't have Solo and Perry on their roster. If they got slapped 13-5 and it was a team of young Korean players, they wouldn't have come back in any of those series. I think I could say that with full confidence. Like that is the class. So what I will say is exciting, and this is just another fucking point that goes toward the Korean region, is that heart and soul of a lot of teams now is as esports is becoming more professional is the coaches, is the support staff and whatnot. There, I think I can say this with almost certainty, although there is some exceptions in NA and in Europe. But this is like the first time that I really feel this way, where it's like Korea, in terms of the leadership that they potentially have, in terms of the coaches, in terms of the support staff that they have in these teams, I don't think that there are other teams that have like more qualified coaches or more qualified like fucking support staff and whatnot. Like if you've got Solo as your like head coach, or you've got Termi as like your head coach for Vision Strikers, like even the European teams don't have people who will like have this kind of experience or have this kind of like tenure and whatnot.
They're all in CS
and
still.
Look, the hard and this goes for like fucking business as well. Like, but like, competitive teams, especially, it's like the heart of your, whatever it is you're doing is the people that you have. And if the core integral people are of like just this intangible quality, like you cannot imitate players who have won a world championship. You cannot imitate that level of experience or that level of like tenure or whatever. It's something that very, very few people has. So you either have someone who's done that or you don't. And the Korean teams have a fuckload of people who've done that. They've got so many people. Like they even had like Bale, for example, playing, like helping out another team in Korea. One of the guy that runs Vision Strikers, who I had a chat to, like put on the fucking Wii game tournament. Sorry, I can't remember what they were called. Like all those Korean 1.6 tournaments that happened in like Seoul, where Fnatic and like those like MYM and shit came over and played over there in Seoul, where those Korean players started to make the name for themselves. He's the guy behind Vision Strikers. Like the people that are fucking endemic to that scene are like on another level. So, I'm really, really excited for what they bring in the future, because I mean, the word for it, like in terms of talking about like human resources or whatever in business, is like you have people that other other competitors can't imitate. They're inimitable. Like you can't possibly create that. It's either something you have or you don't.
All right, well, one thing that we have is not a lot more time. So let's just get to the viewer question and then wrap things up for this episode, which has been a big one. But it's been enjoyable. I've enjoyed this one. So we have one question, and that's from Mihir Bhole. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I think it's probably a bit more Bleh's department than mine. But anyway, the question is, what is with Chinese TOs' love for round robin? It's objectively an inferior and unfair format, suitable only for symmetric games and sports like cricket, football, etc., and cannot be proved useful in asymmetrics like map pool or agent pool games, such as FPSs and MOBAs. And he also goes on to add, why in the world does Perfect World RMR, a Valve-approved event, have such a bad format as well? So, this is obviously close to the heart for at least you, Bleh, because last year you got absolutely blasted by round robins, and even this year as well. But I think I have the answer for this. I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are, though. Okay, well, if you want me to go, I'll just go. It's fine.
I'll just make it very short from my perspective. Look, there are multiple reasons, right? The most obvious one being more games. End of the day, you got to understand that a lot of these TOs, it's a business, right? So it's a business for all these TOs. They want to have more games being played, more hours of Counter-Strike, more hours on the stream, better for their sponsors. It's as simple as that when it comes down to it. And honestly, I really can't blame them for it, right? Like if I was a TO, I'd probably be like, yeah, more hours, everyone gets to play, everyone gets split in a good way. And I don't feel round robins in itself is a bad thing. It's just that when it comes down to the meaningless games, right? That's when things get a little tricky. Some games where the teams they don't really care if they win it or lose it. Where a couple of teams have already not qualified for the event and they don't even have to play for seeding. And in which case, those games become very questionable. Betting issues come into play and all of that stuff. Look, a lot of people smarter than me have spoken about this at great length. I feel round robin is still viable. It just needs a few tweaks. A few checks and balances in place for, games where it just doesn't make sense to have those games. In which case, if there's for me, for example, if I have a round robin, and if there's a game where the two teams haven't even qualified, I'll just cancel that game. I'm like, fuck, it's not worth playing it. Like, that game won't exist in the format. So I feel that like there are ways to go around it. And I don't think it's an Asian problem alone. I think it's been a problem even in a lot of EU tournaments as well in the past. It's just that in the recent past, a lot of the big movers like ESLs and DreamHacks and your Blast and everyone. You remember Blast also used to do a round robin if you just go back a couple of years back as well, right? So I feel like they have kind of realized that maybe it's not the ideal way to approach it. And once you have the big movers making a change, by default, the smaller TOs will follow suit. Unfortunately, in Asia, there's no like real big TOs making any, doing anything big, right? You have some of the qualifiers for the IEMs and the DreamHacks happening once in a while, which are handled by ESL and DreamHack. But apart from that, there's not too many events happening. So it's kind of like the same little echo chamber where all these TOs in China, especially, they're just like, oh yeah, round robin works. They'll just work around it, right? So I don't think it's necessarily something which is evil or bad. It's just that they don't really feel the need to do it, right? And even if like sites like HLTV are like, we don't want to put your tournament on because there are scenarios from your format which could lead to scummy betting shit going on or match throwing or match fixing shit going on over there. They don't care because they're like, it works for us because they're catering to a very local audience. So I feel, it's multiple reasons, but I feel like that kind of covers most of it.
I think so too. Is there anything you have to add, Pilski?
You already covered all of it, but I'll just say it is the dream format for matches to be fixed. So I'll just throw that out there.
Pilski, ever the cynic. But yeah, my answer.
I'm glad you brought it up.
My answer was going to be the tournament length as well. Like, it simply comes down to how many games you can have and how long those games are going to go for and how many hours I can sell to my sponsors. And I've even had instances where I've been casting Asian tournaments and they've said, like, a match has been like a 2-0 or like I'm talking a fucking quick 2-0 as well. Like, like 16-2, 16-2. And I've been like, when are we starting the next game? They're like, oh, in an hour and a half or 2 hours. I'm like, are you serious? They're like, yeah. We have to stream for 10 hours because that's what we told the sponsor. I'm like, Really? Okay. So that's how this is going to be. We don't give a shit about the viewership experience. You can have a 2-hour break on your stream just playing music, just so you can say, oh, well, we streamed for 10 hours. That's what it's like. So basically, that's it.
Did you hit them with the, what about we like roll the games forward and we just leave the stream on a little bit longer at the end?
I
Everybody
literally was
wins.
like, hey, if you want, I'll talk to the players and see if they can start this game early, because I know they want to, because they have to be here on that last game of the evening as well, potentially. But anyway, that's yeah, I think that pretty much answers the question. So thank you very much for the question. And, you know, anyone who has any more, feel free to put them in the YouTube comments and we'll get to them next time we do a show. For now, that's the end of this episode. It was a long one.
We're officially Valorant now.
We're officially
Holy
Valorant
shit.
podcasters too. So let us know what you think about that and everything. Pilski, any final words?
Just two things. I think first of all, I'm really enjoying following a lot of these players into Valorant. You know, I've heard people say, you know, like, I hate the opinion that people have that it's like, Counter-Strike doesn't matter, man. Valorant's a brand new game. You know, and to me, it's the same thing as like going from older versions of CS into new versions of CS and whatnot, or players jumping across esports. It's like, at the end of the day, history is history, and we're following these people. And for me, it doesn't matter like what game they played before. Following their like progression as people and like watching people become champions is why we like love this. So for me, I'm just really enjoying watching all of these guys who, like I said, maybe didn't get a fair crack in CS jump across to Valorant, and I'm going to keep doing it. And you know, I love the game of Valorant, and I probably would be watching it anyway, but I enjoy it even more because I get to see that. And second thing of all being, I would actually really like to cast some Counter-Strike in the Asian region, please. Fuck me, dude. Please let me on a broad.
Well, hopefully.
I'm gonna have to go back and work in the fucking bar, dude. Like, seriously, I'm gonna have to start pouring some more frothy ones. Like, fucking hell, dude.
You know, I hear maybe there's like a bar. Flashpoint has this bar you could potentially work in.
I will work at the Flashpoint bar, please. I'll do anything. Fucking mark me up. Mark me up. I will make cocktails and cast simultaneously, and I'll do it for way cheaper than the next guy. Like,
yeah, Pilski will work for beer. Look, anyway, hopefully, Pilski, there will be some in the near future. I did fail to mention, it was going to be one of our topics, but cut it because of time. There is a DreamHack open for Asia next month. The qualifiers are actually starting on the 10th, which is in a few days. So hopefully, you know, we'll see some of that, and hopefully we'll be able to get to cast that. Bleh, final words?
I started recently watching and playing Valorant. I started playing for the memes, and I started to like actually kind of enjoy it. And I did watch all the Masters event, and I got to say, like Pilski mentioned as well, you know, the fact that, look, behind esports, behind all the game and the graphics and the gameplay, it's a human story, right? That is esports. If you're talking about just the video games, it's your matchmaking and you're playing with your, you know, blah, blah, blah. You just watch, just playing the game. But if you're going to be following esports, it's about the human story. And for me, we're watching Solo and, you know, this Lackey and all these guys, and how much I personally, and all of us obviously, have been championing for the Asian region altogether, and seeing them have a measure of success. Yes, there were a few caveats in their success over there, but success nonetheless is something which kind of like, I wouldn't say inspired me per se, but it really got me invested, man. Like that game that they had against V1, when Newton had against V1, I've not been invested in a game, in any game, in a very, very long time. Sure, I love watching Counter-Strike, but that's a different thing. It's an academic investment. This was genuine emotional investment, and I really missed that. So yeah, I've been really enjoying Valorant, and yeah, you know, Riot should potentially hire us. I won't call them cunts though, but they should hire us.
You gotta be careful. Gotta be careful. Like, there's so much useless knowledge that we have that's just banging around in our heads that like would enrich like everything that's happening. You know, like there's so much context missed.
I remember,
dude,
casting.
I swear, I'm sorry to just cut you off there, but I swear to God, like, you know, watching a lot of the analysts and the casters working the the Masters event. I think all of them are fantastic. I think all of them, some of them are like really good friends as well, and they're really good. But when they start talking about Nuturn and everything, and they talk about like the NA guys and the EU guys, and they're talking about Nuturn, I'm like, motherfuckers, he could talk an hour about solo and all he's done and all he's innovated in multiple games, right? There's so many things, so many storylines, and I want to put it out there. I want to put it out there because I feel the players deserve it.
Yeah, I do as well. And even like some of the guys here in Oceania, like take someone like Texter, for example. I was literally just covering like the Valorant Oceania tour where he's playing for, well, they just unfortunately got upset, but what is Oceania's best Valorant team? I think most people would agree. And he's completely changed like his style of how he plays. Like he used to be like an aggressive rifler, and now he's like more of like a support IGL player and giving like room to other people. Like these people are still playing and like developing and improving and stuff, and it's fucking awesome to watch. And when you lose that history, when you miss that context that came before, because like people just don't get like opportunities to put it out there or whatnot, it sort of cheapens like the narrative, and like for me, like it breaks my kind of like immersion or whatever, because like I said, like Blair said, to use just Nuturn as an example, like I just got so excited for all of that. And it would have been like so fucking epic when they won those like 2 games, when they pulled off those 2 upsets, if people had the context. But
yeah, like I was gonna say, I remember casting with someone for the first time. I won't say who it was, and we were doing an Asian CS tournament, and they were like, holy shit, how do you know all this stuff? How do you remember all this stuff? I'm like, I don't know. It just like, that's just what I
care about it,
because we come into these fucking events, every event, and we do our best to like build the narrative. We do our best to like build the storylines, and because we're endemic to the region, we've done this over years and years and years, where we know these guys like story, we know their career and stuff, and other people can't know their career. Like I've gone and tried to like start casting StarCraft recently, and I like can't know these guys.
It's different.
Story, really. It's different. I can't fucking read like information off a Wikipedia page and tell you the same thing. It's not the same.
No, it's not. It's not the same as being there. But anyway, that is why we are still here doing Geographically Challenged, talking about Asian CS now, talking about Asian Valorant, hopefully to continue those stories into the far future. But guys, we did make it to the 2-hour mark for this podcast. This was supposed to go for about an hour. So I think that just goes to show exactly what's rattling around in these heads at the moment. I think it's a good time to wrap things up, though. Pilski, I know, I can see you're about to say something else. So
someone's really shit at picking topics. That's all I'm going to say.
I'm just going to say we need to stop it there. Otherwise, we're going to be here until tomorrow. But thank you, Pilski. Thank you, Blair. Make sure you guys support them. Follow them on Twitter if you haven't already. And follow me on Twitter. You can drop a like on the YouTube channel, the YouTube video. That would be very much appreciated. And a sub. You can also help us out with a Patreon donation, patreon.com/Elfishguy. And again, that's beer money for the Three Musketeers when we do eventually get somewhere where we can actually share a beer. Who knows when that will be, but hopefully sometime in the near future. Either way, thank you guys for watching, especially if you made it this far. Very, very much appreciated. And we'll catch you in the next episode.
Time.